conversation with Joanne Weiland, who's known as the collaboration expert. She's a visionary strategist, TV, radio, and podcast host, and a 3-time #1 international best-selling author. She has transformed how experts amplify their digital identity, blending innovation with practical strategies for success. As a pioneering industry inventor, Joanne is passionate about simplifying achievement through collaboration and masterminding. She inspires individuals to do what they love and love what they do while mentoring them to reach their highest potential. Her philosophy is clear. Collaborating should be simple, easy, fun, and prosperous. So with that said, here's Joanne Weiland. Well, welcome everyone to the Power Up Your Life podcast brought to you by GoBundance Women. I'm Kelly Resendez.
And I'm Mandy McAllister.
And we have an amazing guest today, Joanne Weiland. Welcome. How are you?
Terrific. How are you?
Doing great. Excited to have you here. And just to start, give us a little bit about your story in your career and where you are.
Well, I've always been a connector, but I didn't always realize I was a connector until I started taking those tests, what you want to do when you grow up. And everything kept saying I'm a connector. I thought, well, big deal. Everybody is, because a lot of times whatever comes natural for you, you believe it's easy for everybody. So that was a big aha. And I thought, next, well, what do you do to monetize if you're a connector? And because it's, you're always introducing people and connecting them. I was doing global alliances when I was 19. I started selling helicopters all over the world. So it was just natural. But again, if you want to start a business, how would you make money doing that? So that's when I created Link to Expert 15 years ago. And it's a way for people to be able to find an expert, check out all their credentials, and hire them in minutes, because it always took us months when we did it the traditional way, where you introduce them and then they'd ask you all these questions, and you'd have to get people to send their bio or their book or their all their credentials to that person. So I thought, well, if we could just have it all in one place, they could just log in, see everything about that person, and know if they were the right fit. And a lot of times it was a committee or a board of directors that was making the decision as well. So each one of them, wherever they were in the world, could see it by logging in, instead of, like, I used to fly somewhere and go in their conference room with them, and everybody would give me their ideas. And it was always interesting to me to see how different people value different things about people for their projects. And so you really didn't always know what they were, but that's why we created it, where they could actually have 40 different pages full of stuff about themselves, so that different people, that different things were important to them, they could see, right off. So that's my story. But actually, since then, just only a couple of weeks ago, I went on a sabbatical, because I've been doing Link to Expert for 15 years. And I just thought I needed a break. And I have to admit, Kelly, you really, really helped me when I did that. And you said when you took one, it was so worth it, right?
Life-changing. Yeah. How did you know you needed to hit pause and just reevaluate? Like, what was the big aha for you in knowing, like, I've already created a successful business, but I need to take some time to really reevaluate?
Well, I think for me, I was going back and forth because of the fact that, I was just not knowing if I wanted to continue doing this. And then what really happened next was the technology. Again, we created this 15 years ago. And back then, everybody said to me, you're 10 years ahead of your time. And they couldn't even relate to what it's like. And, to have something this vast. I mean, because we reached 65,000 people every 2 weeks with information from a newsletter. But also during those 2 weeks, we would be sending an email blast, social media, all kinds of. So it was really like a lot of moving parts. But also, when you create something 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the technology gets old. So all of a sudden you realize, okay, because we put lots of Band-Aids on it, if you will, to make it even better. But sometimes you just can't even put another Band-Aid on. So that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, that I knew we had to stop. And we are, evaluating it. Most people tell me it'll take another year to build something similar. And so I don't really know. I'm just being upfront with you.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
just feel like I just need a little more time to think and actually, you're going to laugh, but not think, because I'm really
Yeah.
good at thinking and coming up with all these ideas of what we could do next and how this would be better. But sometimes I think you have to also just get quiet and know that you'll find the answer and know versus just always thinking you have to figure it all out. Because I think your
Mm.
mind wants to figure it out, but sometimes you have to get into your heart and know
Yes.
in your heart and your soul what is next. Because when you're a connector, there's multiple aspects of it.
Like it's the do energy versus the be energy. And you're being and you're, trusting that answers will come if you're willing to get quiet. It used to stress me out to get quiet because I guess I was afraid of what was going to come. So, high five to you. And that's a real actionable step for anybody listening, that if you feel like you're forcing, that getting quiet can really help you find an answer or a next right step. So, I also fancy myself a connector. When you're talking to a connector about becoming better at what it is that they're doing, give me a couple actionable tips for someone who thinks they're a connector. How do I get better at it? Or someone who wants to be better at it? How do they improve their ability to connect people?
That's a real good question. And I have to admit, I just talk to people while they're talking. I kind of think, I got to introduce you to this person. Wow, you really get along with this person. Wow, you two would be great, collaborating. So, how can you get better? I don't know. When it just comes natural, it's not like I'm always thinking,
I love
but
it.
I do have an idea. Sometimes, though, when you're not even talking to that person, but you try to think of, like, I used to always think of like ways that we could all work together, but try to figure out which of the people I know would be best for this particular project that we could put together. So that was more intentional than just
Mm,
somebody is saying, "Oh, Kelly, you'd be perfect. You got to meet Mandy," you know? And so maybe it's more doing like an intentional thought of doing a project together of
sure.
how we could all work together.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And I think for a lot of us that networking comes naturally. For the people that it doesn't come naturally, it's just a matter of like setting the intention of like finding out what you're working on, who do I know that you need to know, and then
Mm,
making those introductions. And that's just it's a great start there. So being somebody that's been in business for a long time, one thing that you've done is also created a lot of, I would say influence in podcasting or other things. How do you suggest somebody builds influence as a leader? You obviously don't have 65,000 people that you can connect without having influence, right? Like, how did you
Right.
build influence for yourself?
Well, my secret sauce is really that I also connect with connectors. And so
mm,
that's at the 65,000. I really don't know 65,000 people. But way back when cell phones came out, I did remember going to the store Nextel in the 90s and asked them, there's something wrong with my phone. I can't add any more people. And they did tell me, you never knew people knew more than 800 people. Because back then that was the limit. So, I mean, I do know a lot of people, and I think everybody in my phone, it's only about 2,400 now. I think I could sleep on any of their couches tonight if I needed a place to stay. I'm not saying I can live with them, but they would probably know me well enough to know that I could stay at their house and maybe they give me a meal or something. But the point is that you really truly um, have to just do it. Like, for an example, when I quit corporate, since 20 years ago, I remember my mentor told me, Joe, you really got to get out there and know who's who in Tampa. I live in Tampa, Florida. And he said, because you don't have a travel budget anymore, that because I've flown over 1,000,000 miles in 200 cities. I used to be always on the road. That was one of the reasons I left that, just because it was exhausting. But the point is, I became what they called the networking queen, but it wasn't like I really wanted to do it. But I just found different types of networking groups that did different things, and I would just go check them out, because I do feel like you have to try them 2 or 3 times before you know if they're really your tribe.
Mm,
Because sometimes
mm,
you go there and the speaker, for an example, will not resonate with you. So sometimes you have to try that. But I also found, after being the networking queen and sometimes going to 4 networking meetings a day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and evening events, just to try to get to know who is who in Tampa. um, because also, there is a better way, rather than just show up and hope to meet somebody that you uh, will connect with. I find, try to check out who's going to be there, and
mm,
see if you can even ask them ahead of time if you can meet with them, because
sure.
you can waste a lot of time, because most people are there, they're just there to sell you whatever they're selling. And I'm not saying that's bad, because you're wanting to work with them too, but I felt like I really wanted to figure out how we could work together and collaborate, not just sell them. Most of them were in like network marketing back then and all that stuff, and nothing against that. I just mean, I just didn't want to do that, at that
Right.
time.
The pre-homework really helps.
Yes.
Know what you're going for. I love this idea, and it's the same thing that you kind of said before, the setting of an intention for,
Yes.
whatever thing you're moving into, and then just, storing that away for a rainy day. As a female business leader coming up over the last number of years, you know, there are times when you feel stuck. You feel like, oh gosh, I've hit this wall and I don't know what to do next. Well, and you're in a major one right now, it sounds like, right? So what have you done up to this point when you've not known what to do quite yet, and you need to kind of get yourself unstuck? What do you do? What's an actionable thing?
Well, 3 things that I really am back into, and I have been over the years, but they come and go, sometimes. But really, just getting alone time, and letting go, journaling, affirmations, things like that. Reading books that aren't always just self-help books, but more interesting, instead of, only self-help books. And so just doing that, and actually it's weird, but not even having that scheduled routine of everything is so timed. And if you have to be here then, and this, that is kind of nice, just to have no agenda for the day too. It's really interesting to me to see how much other things you could do, or do nothing. And still be okay, because I have a hard time with that. I was always raised by 2 workaholics that yeah, I felt like their hidden motto was do something productive every given second. And so it's, challenging to not feel lazy if you're doing what I just said. So thank you for asking. But yes, I would recommend, yes, trying to be quiet and be okay with just being with you for a while, and
Mm.
being in, or even not thinking, or just reading, like I say, a novel or something.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Well, what would you say is something that's unconventional that you've done in your career that just kind of goes against the grain of what most people have told you to do?
Well, I'm a lot older than both of you, and back in the day when I started traveling, I was usually the only woman in the meetings. I mean, I've been in meetings with 50 men, and like one time over at NASA, this guy next to me taps me and says, "Could you get me some coffee?" I said, "Well, you have to wait. I'm going to be doing the next presentation." So I remember looking here, like, "Well," anyways, that, and I usually was the only woman in first class, because I always got upgraded, because I was always on a plane. And I lived in some cute women that I think were there for other reasons. And I'm not knocking them, but they just were gorgeous. And that's, I'm not nothing against gorgeous women, but, and they were usually 20 years younger than the guy. This again, was years ago. But, and then of course, even the rental car place, it was weird, but I was usually the only woman renting the car. So that was different. But I'm so grateful I did it, because I feel like it helped other women get brave enough to do it, as
Mm.
because a lot of times, they would tell me that they're scared, they don't want to try it. But I'm just one of those people that I feel like if somebody tells me it can't be done, I'll prove it
Mm.
can be. And maybe that's crazy, but anyway, I think that
Yeah, you tell me I can't do something. Wanna bet? Let's
right.
go make it happen. Totally. I love that you took on this kind of badge of if you can see it, you can be it, and you wanted to be that example for
Yeah.
these women. You know, and a lot of us at GoBundance Women have been the kind of lone wolf, the lone woman in whatever thing that's happening. And the reframe that I use is, you know, I there's a lot of dudes that I know that are equally as smart as me that don't get as many speaking engagements because I look different than them. How lucky am I to get to
Right.
represent our gender in this way? You know, it's however you look at it. So I totally applaud your coming up in the way you did and you know maintaining exactly what you needed to move it forward. So you've had a couple of you talked about being in corporate and now you are the leader of this big business and you're moving into your sabbatical time. That's a lot of kind of different shifts, right? One thing that we see a lot is there's an identity associated with being the corporate leader and an identity with the big business owner. And now this identity of someone who's like needs a pause and is taking this pause. And I'm really proud of you for taking that pause. Talk to me a little bit about the identity shifts and how you've really worked through those things.
Well, leaving corporate was a big identity shift because of the fact that, you know, when you're especially used to, like I was always on a plane flying somewhere, because it was back in the day before we had Zoom and everything where you physically visited people and you physically took them for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. One time my son was asked what his mom does. He says she eats because like, for home, like, you know, just had lunch or dinner or something with a client. One time in Vegas, I had 3 breakfast meetings, a lunch meeting, a dinner meeting, and of course a party all in one day. Because back then we also had trade shows that you physically went to because you couldn't see everything online. So that was really interesting to leave. And I can remember when I left, I felt like my body was still moving inside because I was so used to going all the time that that was weird, but it was also all of a sudden, you know, you don't have that title anymore. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And even when you're starting a business, you know, I mean, you start from nothing. Mine was literally a blank piece of paper. And so then you don't really even know what to tell people, you know, that you're doing. And even now, I have to admit, you know, sometimes, you know, I get lots of phone calls and people ask me to come work for them or do something with them. And I'm flattered, but it's like, I need more time to really know what I want to do. And like one of the things that I've always had in the back of my head, and I tried to do a lot with Lead to Expert, but I've been blessed to get many downloads and I have over 181 streams of income that experts can do. So I want to figure out how to also help people because a lot of people, they are stuck on one stream of income or two, and I'm not even knocking them, but they don't realize how easy it would be to parlay that into other streams with what already they're doing. So I don't know. I'm telling you guys on here, it's not really a secret, but that's something that's really been in the back of my head for years. And because I was so stuck on Link to Expert and it took a lot of my time and effort and energy, that I'm thinking maybe this is what I'm supposed to do to help women and men because they can both benefit from it. But it really is sad to me to see how most people don't do it. So I don't know what is going to come with that, but meaning the identity now, how do I transition from being a Link to Expert person, whatever, to multiple streams of income? And it's kind of intertwined, but I don't know. It is interesting that you asked that because I really do believe that we get caught up in our identity. And if we don't be careful, it drives you to keep doing maybe what you don't really want to keep doing.
Ooh, so good. That's so good. And so many people, you're good at it, right? So you're good at something. And so
Yes.
you think that you should keep doing it when really, you know, we are made for more. So, you know, you've had an opportunity to work with countless business owners and people that are trying to scale their business, connect with more people, build opportunity. How do you see like people sabotage themselves? What do you think the top ways are that a business owner's been sabotaging their own success when you see their potential of being able to get to the next level?
Good question, because I think we all do it to some extent. And a lot of times it's from either when you were younger or even recent. And you have people say things like, who do you think you are? You know, like me, I grew up in a small town. Most of those people never left the state of Pennsylvania, and a lot of them never even left the county. And when they heard that I moved to Florida and then that I traveled, every week somewhere, they thought I was crazy. But I had to constantly fight that too, because they would just think that was insane. And they still
Mm.
do it when I go there for family reunions or whatever. So you have to be careful what other people think. Doesn't affect you, because a lot of times they really want you to stay the way you are because they're comfortable there. So you have to
Yeah.
recognize that that might be their comfort zone, but that doesn't mean that it has to be yours. And so we have to
Mm.
be so conscious of not doing something because we feel like they're going to think we think we're in, is what we used to call it, instead of thinking you're
Mhm.
hot stuff or whatever. So just know that if you know that you want to do something, just do it. And don't worry, because everybody gets nervous. And the only way you're ever going to get over it is by just doing it. And,
Mm.
like when we started our TV radio podcast show, I have to admit, I mean, I was like, I don't know if I can do this because there's all, also video. And my producer, that was also my co-host, thank God, but she told me that she would do it with me, because every time I was asked to do a TV or radio show myself, or, then later podcast, I would have had to do it myself. And that's another thing, maybe partner with somebody else that somebody has the experience with it, so you can glide with them instead of floppy and you feel like, and even if you do,
Mm.
don't, I mean, I read so many books about podcasters. You just really have to do it to you, fake it till you make it, because and you're going to keep learning from doing it. But if you never do it, you don't even know what, you could be.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not embarrassed of the first couple episodes, you waited too long to launch. I
Right.
believe that. And I believe that to be true about this sweet podcast that we're on. So, Joanne, you are just a joy. I think that you set such a strong example for female leaders. I'm so grateful for the energy that you bring. One thing that we really believe at GoBundance Women is we want women to be prepared with their ask so that they recognize that thing when they see it. So I'm curious for you, what is an introduction or a resource that changes the ball game for something that you're working on so that our listeners and Kelly and I might serve you?
Well, what I've found over the years, it really is important. I used to think I could convince people to become collaborators, because I love
Mm.
didn't want to just connect with people. I wanted to figure out how we can help each other. That's what Kelly and I were working on before I went on sabbatical. How can we, work with GoBundance and link to expert? But I also found that if you're not a collaborator, it's not natural. So it's hard for them, and they don't always want to learn it. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying they don't want to do it, but it is a different mindset. And so,
Mm.
like, if you can find other people that are already collaborating in my world, that is the key, because they already understand the value of all of us, all three of us on this call, for an example, have a true win-win-win, instead of just thinking, what's in it for me? And they don't even mean to be uncollaborative. They just haven't, because think about it also, when you're in corporate, like when I was in corporate and I was in sales, what did they do? Not just did we have all these competitors that we had to sell against, but they would always post whose sales every day. So
Mhm.
you're trying to beat your coworkers in selling more. So it's like such a competitive world, so that it's not like they didn't want to be collaborative, but most of them were never taught that it's cool to be a collaborator.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
love it.
Well, you have shared so much today. I mean, the biggest thing I think is the courage that you've had to pause and recognize that you either need to innovate, the platform, or maybe you're going to do something different, and that takes just a tremendous amount of courage. Mandy, what about you?
Oh, I love the get quiet. because you're never going to hear a message or download from God if you're not willing to get quiet or journal or listen. And that's a lesson that I keep learning over and over again. So thank you for speaking it again into my life, Joanne. So any of our listeners that want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
My email probably is the easiest. Weiland, JWEILAND at link LANK to TL expert EXPERT.com, because I still have that email. And also, if they want to text me, 727-243-9453. 727-243-9453.
This is how
Amazing.
you
Whoa.
end up filling up your phone book, Joanne. You give
Yep.
your phone number away.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, Joanne,
love it.
thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Power Up Your Life podcast. Again, brought to you by GoBundance Women. For any of you out there that want to power up your business, head over to powerupyourlifenow.com for just a long list of resources that are going to help you build authority and influence. So thank you again, Joanne, and feel free to share this episode, give us a review as well, and we will see you on the next Power Up Your Life podcast. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.